you try to avoid conflict with your coworkers? Do you spend a lot of time on the job trying to be diplomatic and negotiate? Well, stop it. Our guest this morning says a good fight is one of the best ways to help build relationships in the workplace. Her name is Lynn Izagir, and she is the author of a new book called The Power of a Good Fight. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Liz.
Now, I've heard of having a good discussion, but what is a good fight?
Well, a good fight is one, as you said, that builds relationships and builds creativity. So good fights share several characteristics. One thing is that they're about ideas, not about personality. They're fought by people who are managing their emotions appropriately. You know, we all have emotions, but we want to manage them appropriately in the moment. They're fought by people who understand the value of conflict. And last but not least, where conflict is out in the open. So it's not flying below the radar screen, it's not masked.
Okay, if that is a good fight, what is a bad fight?
Well, a bad fight is one where we get into personality disputes, or where we're fighting about something that's not the real issue because we're afraid to bring up the real issue, or where people don't understand that conflict is a part of life and that really can lead to more creativity and more energy in organizations.
Okay, now you say that there are really 5 different personality styles when you fight. What are they? I know the first one is called the pit bull, right?
Right. Pit bulls are people who are very aggressive, very competitive about conflict. They actually like to argue, they like to debate, they like the back and forth of a good argument. I'm a bit of a pit bull. So that's in contrast to people who avoid conflict, one of which is I call people road runners, who are, you know, beeping down the road when you want to sit down and talk to them. And a lot of times at work or at home we find people who have very different conflict styles, which can create problems. For example, in families you find this. In my family, my husband tends to avoid conflict. I tend to be very aggressive about conflict, which creates interesting situations.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So what we want to do if we work with somebody who avoids conflict is realize that these are frequently the thinkers among us, people who like to think before talking. Now, who knew you could think before talking? I certainly didn't.
No, not of course.
I never had an unexpressed thought. So what we want to do is give them time to think. Tell them we want to talk about something, make an appointment to talk to them about it later so that they have time to get their thoughts together.
Now, let's say you are the road runner, okay, and you're dealing with the pit bull. That can be very intimidating, I would imagine, somewhat overwhelming at the same time.
It can be. And what you need to understand about pit bulls is that they have a lot of passion, they have a lot of energy, so you need to let them talk. You know, sort of give them a lot of space to talk a lot, to express their emotions. Keep asking them open-ended questions. If you can't think of something else, say something like, tell me more. And pit bulls, you know, they tend to be kind of like balloons full of hot air. If you let them talk long enough, eventually they'll get down to a manageable size so that you can have a dialogue.
When you're in a work environment, when do you know, when is it proper to bring up an issue, and when should you just say, you know what, I'm going to let this one just lay?
Yeah, well, obviously that depends on the situations, and it's always a good idea, Liz, to pick your battles. But I like to talk about assuming leadership in conflict. So I think that generally we wait too long to bring up important issues because we hope they'll go away, or again, we think that conflict is somehow dysfunctional. So in a tactful way, when somebody really has the time to have a dialogue, I think that it is good to bring up issues, because if we wait too long, we get into what's called the negative spiral of conflict, and then it's very difficult to resolve.
That's what I was going to ask you next. When you're in the middle of a conflict, how do you avoid and how do you forget your emotions?
Well, we all have emotions. So I'm all for emotions, have your emotions, but we need to learn to express our emotions at a level that doesn't just get so out of hand we can't have a good dialogue. So think of emotions as like the weather. You know, you can give a weather report. It's Tuesday, I'm angry, and I need to talk about this issue. But we don't need to express our emotions in a way that's intimidating to the other person, or that escalates into violence, or that doesn't allow them to have their own feelings about the subject. So really, again, it can be reported in a matter-of-fact way.
Are there any businesses that you know of that use this type of approach of encouraging conflict in their business?
Well, I think that there are a lot of people who are doing it. You know, my clients, for example, people like Harley Davidson or Bristol Myers, people like that, do encourage people to speak up and have dialogue. And I think that if you have that, we can avoid some of the problems we've had in corporate America lately, where obviously if you have huge amounts of corporate fraud going on, you haven't created an environment where people can speak up if they know something is going on that's wrong. So we want to create environments where people feel comfortable if they see an ethical or legal violation speaking up about it.
Do you find that men and women deal with conflict differently?
In some organizations, that's still true, especially in organizations where men are still dominating the power structure. Then women may feel that they have to suppress their emotions or can't bring issues up. So sometimes women will triangulate conflict. They'll talk to somebody else about the issue rather than going to management, or sometimes they will wait too long to bring up an issue and then explode at times that other people may feel are inappropriate because the issue has gone on for too long.
So for the women that do that, what kind of suggestions would you have for them?
Again, I would suggest that they bring up issues sooner and realize that it's not a negative thing to have conflict, that if they're willing to speak up and assume leadership in the situation in a diplomatic way, in a skillful way, that it can be a positive in the long run.
Okay, let's say you do bring up an issue and then you are in the heart of a conflict and it is not going well. You actually have 3 what you call last-ditch questions that could probably help. What are they?
Right. Well, I think one thing that you can ask is, what will you do if we don't resolve this? What do you think I will do if we don't resolve this? And last but not least, I think it's always a good thing to take a break, to realize that conflict resolution can sometimes take more time than we like. We live in a society where people scream at the microwave because it takes too long and everybody wants everything drive-through.
Right.
So sometimes we just need to take a time out and then come back and start over again.
All right. The new book is called The Power of a Good Fight. Lynn Izagir, thank you so much for coming in this morning. Very good tips. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz.
And you are watching Wellness Now.